Hi. Before we begin, just so you know you're not alone on this journey, at papernapkinwisdom.com, we've got free tools designed to help leaders like you find clarity and momentum. No pressure, just support. You can grab them anytime. You can even grab them from social media. The link's in the bio.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 281. This is the place where one sharp idea sketched on a napkin can unlock your next result. Today's guest is Pete Olander, builder of wellness and functional beverage brands who compete in regulated, fast-moving markets. As you listen, you can begin to notice how operating with constraints actually sharpens your edge. When the rules shift, the story clarifies. When choices multiply, the customer signal simplifies. Imagine leading your team with that lens, designing for real-life use, making the right thing the easy thing, and scaling what customers prove they love. Whether you're defending share or opening a new category, you might find that speed of decision, role clarity, and compliance muscle become growth levers, not costs. And as Pete and I unpack this playbook for you, you might hear the one friction point you're ready to remove this week. The single change that turns curiosity into repeat use. I won't give away Pete's napkin, and yet, as you pay attention to the patterns, you'll likely map them out on your own KPIs. Simpler onboarding, tighter feedback loops, cleaner offers. And when you hear the moment that clicks for you, write it down, then act. If you're ready to compete at a higher level, starting now, grab a pen, grab a napkin, and let's go. And when you've got your takeaway, share it with us at #PaperNapkinWisdom so the rest of us can learn from your edge. Let's listen in. Pete Olander, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here, Govind.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
So you shared a really great napkin, and I want to read it out to everybody listening. It says, "Don't back away from a challenge. The lessons learned through failures direct you to success." Why did you share that with me?
Well, it's just something I've learned maybe the hard way over about 7 years of being an entrepreneur. Because in life and business and anything, challenges are, I guess, they can be a little maddening, but at the end of the day, they're what make life, and they kind of make it fun. So I started to kind of reframe those challenges and look at them as obstacles and figure out, hey, this was put here for a reason. I'm supposed to find a way around it because I need to be flexible and I need to find a way to get to my end goal.
I like that. And obviously, people have said similar things like this before, but one of the things that I really think is interesting is this last sentence, the lessons learned through failures, and you used a word, direct you to success. I think that's pretty intentional. Like this idea that it's not just, oh, you learn from your failures. No, they're directing you to your success. That's a really big reframe. And you use the word reframe. So this is an intentional thought. So tell me why you use the word direct there.
Well, because there's lessons in it. And a lot of times the thing that's causing the biggest issue with you, if you sit down, think about it, meditate on it, or just have an open mind, you can pinpoint, hey, this is the reason I'm running into this challenge. And that right there is a sign that I need to make a difference or a change for this, or else I'm going to keep, repeating the same mistake over and over again. Kind of like, I think Einstein had the quote, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
But really identifying, hey, there's all challenges and, some have patterns to them and some don't. The one thing that's constant though is every day you're going to have some kind of challenge. Now, what are you going to learn from it? and what's the action you're going to take to change it or to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because if you don't, you're going to have to keep repeating that.
I like how you acknowledge that some challenges have a pattern to it and some don't, right? And they direct you in different ways based on the pattern, right? The patterns may mean one thing and the lack of patterns might mean something else. How do you recognize the pattern? What do you do to get honest about the pattern? Now, you talked about meditation, but what's the process?
Well, I mean, I think the process is your life. You have to be really cognizant of, hey, what are the experiences I've had in life? Because some of the patterns I see, whether it's in business or family or, whatever it is, I'll pull something in from my family life, dealing with my kids or lessons I'm teaching them, and be like, okay, well, this is very similar to an issue I'm having with a coworker or a partner. And this is how I was able to break it down. Like, okay, so now I need to walk through how to explain this in a way and understand I need to get to this end result, whatever it is. But there is a barrier in communication somewhere. There's something that, this person isn't seeing. And I've experienced, a way of, getting my kid to go do a chore, right? But my employee doesn't really think it's that important. Well, it is. And let me kind of reframe it and go that way. Now, there's challenges that you go into where, maybe there is no pattern, in business, I haven't done an M&A acquisition like this, or I haven't done this before. Well, that's kind of the unknown, but even with the unknown, you have so many other factors coming in because of personalities or who's in the room or what's important to them. There are some things around there that you can kind of, glean some clues from of, hey, maybe this is where I need to take a stab at it because it may be off topic or obscure, but right now I'm in the land of unknown and I got to try and reach for something that's semi-familiar where I can get some comfort, get my mind right, and, hopefully make a better decision.
Yeah. Well, I think you dropped something really big here. Getting your kid to do a chore, that by itself is a whole paper napkin. That's like $1 million idea. If you can find a way to get your kids to do a chore, you've solved, I think, 80% of parents' problems. But kidding aside, I like how you associated the fact that the solutions to these patterns or the existence of these patterns may mean that the solution to a challenge could be in your personal life, in your family life, to something you experience in business, and vice versa. That right? In you might have experienced something in your business life that you can bring into your personal life, and it has value to you because you're not separating business and personal that way. You're saying no, these patterns can exist in both places, and the solutions are transferable skills, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. And especially if you're entrepreneurial or you own your own business. I mean, your business is, kind of your persona. And, you have to have that, I guess, multidimensional approach to life or a balanced life, because if you're so focused on this one thing, you've got your blinders on to everything else this world or these people or relationships are trying to tell you. And if you start looking for them or start paying attention or just being aware in that, you don't know how it's going to relate, but it is crazy how I have seen it kind of evolve over time where a conversation I have with a friend all of a sudden becomes really relevant in a business conversation I have a week down the road.
Mm. But you got to be open-minded to that. And the other thing that I think is interesting about the way you shared your paper napkin, you said don't back away from a challenge. So did you used to back away from challenges? Is that something that you had to teach yourself to get over?
Definitely. Definitely. I think, before I jumped into the entrepreneur world, I was in, more of the corporate world and, looking at that structure, and it was just a different mentality. Like you didn't want to take too many risks because you wanted to be safe. And I'm not saying everyone's like that. That's just kind of how I operated in that. Right. And at the end of the day, or as I kind of progressed through my entrepreneurial journey, I realized that the only really way to grow was to challenge yourself, find out what you needed some work on, or find out really what you were really good at and you didn't believe you could be good at it. So you're not going to know that unless you take a risk, look at a challenge, or, trying to obtain the impossible task. Because at the end of the day, that's going to be your story. And that's going to be something that's going to give you confidence, moving forward with whatever aspect you're dealing with.
Yeah. I really like that. I'm not sure you're aware of this, but entrepreneurs, the word entrepreneur has a French origin, and the French origin, one of the definitions I read a long time ago was someone who likes to undertake challenges. And just the way you define that was really interesting, right? That you left the corporate world, became an entrepreneur to undertake challenges, and that is the definition of entrepreneur, or the etymology, the origin of the word. And I think that's really interesting the way you led into that. Um, the other thing that I think that was really interesting is you seem to be okay with giving it a shot, right? Like now, you said it was a process to get there, but a lot of people are really challenged or scared to take the swing, right? To step in the box and take a swing. How did you get over that?
Well, I think it was just, understanding that, what I looked at before was just fear of failure, fear of, not coming through, not doing what I said I was going to do. But at the end of the day, I looked at it and I was like, well, you're missing out on half your life or half of the good things that you can potentially get. What if you do hit it right? What if you bring something to the table and this is a massive success? Well, if you don't try, you're never going to get there. And at the end of the day, even if you do fail, everyone fails. I mean, probably repeatedly every day. And it's kind of what builds that, camaraderie, or at least compassion or empathy among people, because, most people are like, yeah, I tried something like that, or I did this and didn't work out. But you know what? We can build from that. And I think that's an inspiring thing, to not be afraid of it, because, you can get back up and do something again, or find something else, or find a better way, as long as you don't just keep letting that bounce around in your head and thinking about that failure to stop you from taking that next action or taking that next step.
I like this idea also that failure helps you build things immediately, right? It's not even the direction towards success, but it's also building this camaraderie, this compassion, this empathy with other people in the present moment. And that's, going through something with somebody is a win right away. Like, so even if you lose, having that shared experience is a pretty powerful thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because especially if you're going through it with a team, because you can then really see at that point in time, okay, how do they react in the situation? How do I react in the situation?
Mhm.
All right, here's some lessons maybe that this didn't work or this really worked, and we need to go forward. Because, through, building companies, at the end of the day, that's still in my head. I've got it on paper. I've got a plan that I share people, but at the end of the day, nobody knows what that future is going to look like. But what we do know right now is the interaction that we're having right now to handle whatever we're trying to accomplish right now. So, either go big or go home. Yeah, let's go big and figure out right now if this isn't going to work, instead of dragging it out, taking baby steps, or whatever. Like, let's get right into the meat of it, and let's make some quick decisions, because time is more expensive than money, especially when you own your own business. So you got to find out what works, what doesn't, who can come along with the journey, who can adapt with you and grow.
That's amazing. And that's direction as well, right? That's directive as well, isn't it? Understanding who can come with you, who's going to actually be there. And the people who build camaraderie, build compassion, empathy with each other are the ones that are most likely aligned with you on the other side of the journey, aren't they?
Of course, that's your tribe. If they know you from that aspect, they are going to move mountains for you, because it's not always going to be easy. But the people who can fight through stuff with you, they're going to be ones who stick with you because you've already experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about, you said right off the top that you learned this the hard way. What do you mean by that? You learned it the hard way.
Well, you know, I think coming from, jumping in to do my own thing, I think I was just naive or maybe had a little bit of an ego of kind of what it was going to take and, how I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I just didn't realize, launching something and doing something yourself, how many challenges, how long the perseverance it takes to do it. And I was very fortunate prior to getting into this. I worked in banking and was, at a great client list at several successful business entrepreneurs, and they all thought differently and they did this. But I was seeing them at a point where they had been through everything. They had already built a successful business. So, people at that level, or some of the other entrepreneurs I talked to or would go to for mentorship, I guess we really didn't focus on the grit it took, as it started, or as they faced their setbacks and challenges, how they got through it. So I had known they were probably there, but when you live it yourself, it becomes real quick.
It does, doesn't it? You know what really jumped out when I asked you about how you learned it the hard way? You said maybe I was a bit naive and I had a bit of an ego. Don't those feel like totally opposite things? Like I'm naive, I don't know what's going on. I was innocent to the thing, I don't get it. And then the other side of it is this paradox is no, I had a bit of an ego. Like I knew what I wanted to do. I saw the vision. I was going to get it done. But that's the entrepreneur story, right? Like we kind of
An
have this,
entrepreneur has to play both sides of it at all times.
right? Right.
Juggling things.
I love that.
But it's my ego made me naive, closed off to the possibilities or the things that you don't know what's happening around you, right? And that's why it's so important to surround yourself with the people who have your back, who have the different angles, because this experience is ours, right? But there is a lot going on in the world that's outside that I have no idea quite yet, but it's coming.
Yeah. And this, so your point around surrounding yourself with people who've got your back leads me to the fact that you seem to be very deliberate about surrounding yourself with mentors earlier on, people who had walked the path that you want to walk, and they may have been your clients previously, but now you're soliciting them as mentors to help you on your journey. And I think a lot of people hesitate to surround themselves to start off with, but that came naturally to you, it sounds like. Am I wrong?
Yeah, because I realize, and I know there's just, like I said, there's so much out there to know. One person can't do everything, and one person's not going to be an expert in everything. If you are, you might need to check your ego because there's just not enough time to do it. But I've gotten better at it as far as selecting teammates and things through my experiences that I've went through. But one thing to realize too is through your company growth or entrepreneurial journey, there are points in time where you need to find a different mentor, right? You learned a certain aspect of the business from this individual, and now it's time to move on, and it's okay to do that. It just has to be, you have to really manage those relationships, and I love relationships. I tend to maybe get a little too close to them as far as friendship level, but if I'm going to work with someone and pour my heart into something and have a passion for it, I want to make it in a good place.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot in what you just said. One of the things you also said was there's so much out there to know. One person can't do it all, and it reminds me of an early paper napkin from someone by the name of Greg Crabtree. And he shared that growth is not an addition thing, it's a subtraction thing. What do you have to let go of to move forward? And it sounds like what you did was you start off with this big pie and you got sharper and sharper and sharper about what you were doing. And you're even talking about that in terms of how you manage and curate the relationships that you have around you with mentors, that you're focusing more acutely on the areas in which you need help with right now, and recognizing that there are seasons for that. It might what you need today might be different than tomorrow. Is that right?
Oh, that's exactly right. It's like you think about like a big cloud, all these ideas and all these relationships and people you have, right? Okay, great. Let's figure out what's going to come together the right way, the best way. At the end of the day, you have to understand you can't do it all at once. So, boom, we're going to take, these ideas, these concepts, and just see if we can do this, prove this out, and it's going to kind of guide you. It's going to narrow and narrow that cloud, that scope, to a point where it directs you to this is where we're going, because now we have found something that we align with, something that we, can do. We can create some action, and we're getting some results. So how do we add some fuel to that fire? And then what's the next idea of how we can make this better over here? Who's the next person, contact, mentor that, we haven't quite tapped into yet or haven't met, but they're out there. You just have to, it's, like you said, addition by subtraction. Some things will weigh you down because you got that worry of what's happening with this over here. Well, if that's not generating, some success for your business or something you can build on, at the end of the day, it's an anchor, and you need to get to this other place.
Yeah, I really like that. You seem like the kind of person who's been really good at curating relationships around you throughout, right? Whether it was in your previous life or now as an entrepreneur. Somewhere out there, somebody's listening to this and saying, "Oh, that's really great for someone who's just got this great network like Pete does, but I'm alone. I feel alone." What would you say to that person right now?
Well, I would say that you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people in this entrepreneurial journey, you have to be willing to isolate yourself. You have to be willing to sit by yourself, think through things, because the more noise you have coming at you, everyone's got a different opinion of what's going to work better, or something else you should be doing. But what you have to realize is, great, that's a suggestion, but how do I put this into effect? Because at the end of the day, the success or failure of this business is going to be on me, because I'm the entrepreneur on this, or I'm the driving force behind it. So it doesn't matter how big your team is. If you're leading that, the leader's got to take the blame. So relationships are good. And I've been very fortunate with the relationships I've had, and I've curated them over years, but I'm not, fully dependent on them, and I don't really only rely on them for, I call them up. I don't call them up just when I say I need a business, question answered. A relationship comes from how well you know them personally, how well you can connect with them on other things, because that's really what, in my opinion, when someone calls me and I have a relationship with them, I'll be on a walk and something will pop into my head of something that can help that person. And I'll call that person, and I always want to give something first. I want to, let them know I'm thinking about them some way. But if you're reliant on your network to give you all your ideas, to do all the work for you, you're in for a rude awakening, because like I said, it's on you.
I like that, and it reminds me of something that I like again in our community of Paper Napkin is we say that if you're stuck, the best way to get momentum is to give it away. And so you're out for a walk, maybe thinking about something because you're stuck, but the best way to give momentum is to get momentum is to give it away. You give it away to somebody, you help somebody, and man, that gives you a lot of energy, doesn't it? And I mean, you're even lighting up talking about that, like
Karma
thinking
is
about
real.
it.
Karma is a real thing.
Right.
I believe that in business and in the universe. So I think you gotta give to get, and a lot of times if you're given with good intention, and it's going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form.
So let me ask you about the lessons learned through failures direct you to success. I really like this idea. Are you diligent about making sure you remember the lessons? Because sometimes, if you're like me, I might make the mistake more than once, and I've just directed myself into a circle. Do you avoid that in some way? Do you have a trick to that?
I try. I've gotten better at it. One of the lessons I've learned in the past is I've had some, when I was starting the business, like I said, I've become more confident in my abilities as I've progressed in my journey because I've had to learn, basically every aspect of the business to be competent at it, not an expert. But as I started out, we came in with some partners, or I came in and found some partners who I thought could, manage some other aspects of the business. And I didn't cut that off as soon as I should have, and it delayed a lot of pain, right? So I thought I'd learned from that and took on another partner, and it worked for a while until it didn't because we weren't aligned. So I think the second time was really what kind of crystallized in my mind. But even if you make a mistake, the first time, there's no guarantee you're not going to make it again. You just have to make sure to how to correct it quicker, and understand that maybe that is a blind spot for you. So and that's really through more time I spend in my isolation hour of the day while I'm thinking through of, all right, these are things that went right for me today. These are things that went, I could have done better at. And this is what I'm going to go trying to achieve. So it's keeping them fresh in your mind. Or, sometimes if you make mistakes, they're just so painful. That scar is never going to go away. You're never going to forget it.
Yeah, yeah, I know those ones. Um, I like the power of the day piece. Tell me what that means to you. Like, how do you set your day up?
So I wake up about 5:30, get up, have a nice cup of coffee, and spend about 30 minutes either reading a book. I've been reading a book lately, the Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and kind of just think about what I want to accomplish for the day, and get my mind right. Head to the gym, and then I head over to do a sauna and cold bath, to really do a full detox for the day. Come back, say hi to the kids, see them off to school or camps or whatever, and sit down at my computer if I'm in my home office, and start cranking away on the day.
That's great. And it sounds like you've got a bit of a routine there. Do you keep that up no matter what? Is that table stakes, or is that something that you find is challenging?
No, that's non-negotiable. I mean, at first, I used to work out at night back, a while ago, but then I got on to my morning routine, and it just how to start the day off right. And so now I just wake up early without an alarm, regardless.
Hmm.
And I don't think I've missed more than a week in the gym since I've been for like 30 years. So it's just something that's been ingrained. If I don't do it, I don't feel quite right. So it's non-negotiable for me to at least get out, exercise. It's kind of my social interaction too. It's a different friend circle that I go meet up at the gym too. So it's great.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm a big fan of that. And today was deadlift day, so yeah, I align with what you're just saying. And I think that these are also things that can direct us in the right in the with momentum to start the day if we have routines that support and serve creating a positive mindset for ourselves. um, I like how you're tying it all together, and I like how you also talked about the recognizing the blind spot around when you go back to you had that first partnership that you counted on them taking care of certain things and it didn't work out, and then a second partnership is sort of a similar thing, and then you recognize maybe they had a bit of a blind spot around that thing. when you've discovered that you have a blind spot, tell me about how you cover that blind spot with people. I mean, obviously, you've done some learning from that. How do you manage that? How do you protect against your blind spots?
Well, I just had to sit down and think about, because typically when these partners were brought in or we formed a partnership, it's for a certain aspect of the business that I needed help in, and really it was because I didn't understand it too well, or I didn't understand what went into it. So I think it's just educating myself in, okay, how big of a need really is that? Really, what goes into that? What's going to be the barometer of success, instead of just saying, "Hey, you're great at this. Go do this because you've done it in the past." No, it's all right. What actually can you do? What tools do you need? Um, and what is your attitude towards it? And I want to be more. The experience is one thing. Capacity is another, and really having the passion and the ability to adapt and pull it all in. It's more of looking at who actually the people are and what makes them tick. Because I would, you know, looking for new employees, new partners, I want to find somebody who is, has a little passion to them, has like willingness, open-mindedness, instead of, hey, this worked for me for 18 years. I'm just going to keep, drilling this way. Well, the world has changed so drastically because of, either AI or this work from home stuff, or what, like nothing is the same as it used to be. So experience is kind of out the window. Now, what are your capabilities? Like, what's your general knowledge? And then can you think outside the box? Because it is guaranteed that skill or that need is going to evolve over the next forever. That's just part of it. So if you can't adapt, you're stuck in that time capsule, because businesses, consumers, everybody, it's on to the next.
Yeah, I really like that, and I also think it's really, again, you're very good at the reframe. When I asked you about the failure around partnership, you immediately direct yourself in the direction of, there was some knowledge that I didn't have about blank, and you went to acquire that knowledge and also assess how important was it that you had this knowledge in this way versus another way. You got really curious about that. And I think that's a great reframe. And I think it's also really powerful that you're kind and gentle with yourself about that learning process too, right? Because you have to be. You're being kind of gentle with yourself about the learning process and saying, no, I don't. It's not that I don't have I have a problem with partnerships. I had a problem with not or overemphasizing a certain skill or talent or information, and then not bothering to learn about it. And that's a big reframe. A lot of people don't make that naturally, and I think that that's something that I don't want people to miss. So sometimes we get other people to do things because we haven't really assessed how important that thing is to us, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly, well, and just like the napkin, I mean, that, in my mind, I failed not looking at the right aspect or the reason I wanted this person as a partner on the team, right? So now I'm not going to stop. I'm going to go in, but it's directing me to say, this is really what you need to focus on. This is what you need to look, because all these other stuff, all these other things that you thought were so important, those are just prerequisites. But really, the diamond is this. And if you find this, or can get this person to achieve at this level, or to think outside the box, or to almost make it their own, like that's, if you want them to stay within the vision, but you want them to expand the boundaries, right? If you have that person who has that passion, who has that capability and knowledge, they're going to take you to greater heights than what you can just sit and, point to a screen and say, I want this, or I want this, or I want this. No, I want you to create something in, with our company in mind, with our vibe, with what we're trying to build together. I want you to make it better. If you can find someone like that, that's a diamond.
Yeah, I really, I think that's an amazing place to leave it. And speaking of that, speaking of building something, many years ago, we had a guest on our show. His name was John Rulin. He shared with us an inspiring paper napkin, which was what you appreciate appreciates. And when he was talking about was when you appreciate somebody, they appreciate and value not only to themselves and around them, but also to you. And that relationship appreciates and value. Everything appreciates. And he turned that napkin into a movement. His book was called Giftology. And unfortunately, he suddenly passed away. And as a hat tip and acknowledgement and appreciation of the contribution he's made to the world, we ask all our guests this year to appreciate something. So is there anybody that you'd like to shout out in appreciation?
Yeah, I'll give, is it okay if I give two?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, number one, it would have to be my wife. So, being married to someone who's an entrepreneur probably is never easy. She's a good sounding board, whether she wants to be or not. And, there's always some tough conversations here and there. So I guess the willingness to put up with a guy like me through it, I got to be grateful for that. And I would say the next one, I'm grateful to the gentleman who I just, recently became good friends with, brothers, whatever. His name's Roy, and he's a business contact who I've formed a friendship with. And he brought me out to Atlanta to go meet some of his other business people. And, they have built a company, and it's something I haven't seen in a long time. Like, it's when you see company magic, when they've built a big company. I think they have 50 employees, and the way their team works together and likes to be with the other and smile and, have fun together, it was refreshing for me to see that. So I'm grateful that I was, able to go kind of witness it, because it's rare. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's rare. And when you see it, you know it. So it was great to see that happen again.
That's awesome. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Pete Olander, for bringing a builder's playbook from a regulated, fast-moving market. If you're leading a team that wins on execution, you probably noticed at least one move you can implement before the week is out. Here's some key takeaways. Design for real-life use. As you simplify formats and first-use moments, you reduce the willpower tax and increase daily active users. Make the right thing the easy thing. When the better choice is the simpler path, repeat purchase and adoption climb. Build for volatility. Treat rule changes as inputs. Create redundancy, compliance muscle, and short feedback loops. Tell an experience-first story. Lead with what it does and when you feel it and how to use it. Then back it with proof. Hire for decision speed and role clarity. Faster reversible decisions free up momentum and compound learning. Choose one friction point and remove it. Ship a visible improvement onboarding step, whether it's a flavor or format, sign-up flow, pricing clarity, and track a single KPI, conversion, DAU, reorder rate, or cycle time, and report the delta to your team. If this episode helped sharpen your edge, follow, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Post your takeaway on a napkin with the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom so we can amplify your insight. Pete, grateful for your time and wisdom. And to you listening, as you write it down, act fast and measure. You might just notice how small moves done now turn into big results. See you next time on Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we turn napkin ideas into outcomes that matter. Make it a great day.